positions in different places. So, in brief, I think this is a fascinating time for all of us to be talking about this area. There's a lot of remarkable transformation that is needed if we really want to turn the events around. I personally believe it's doable, it's possible. Education is very key. Technology is very key. And I think NUS, with a program like yours and with people like Professor Koh, sponsor Mr. Jensen's and other, I'm very, very positive. So I really feel honored to be able to speak like this today. Professor Koh, I still did it in 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Lohani. I'm sure you realize what a comprehensive talk this has been, with some important messages for all of us, for different aspects of the industry, etc. So how about a warm round of applause for him again? Yeah. And we have, obviously, our moderator, Professor Tomiko, who needs very little introduction. He is actually a diplomat extraordinaire. He's been very much an icon of the environmental situation in Singapore. He's done a lot of work here. So I'm sure Professor Koh will be able to engage you. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I'm sure he has a lot of questions himself. So warm round of applause for Professor Koh. It's all yours.
Thank you. On behalf of the National Environmental Agency and NUS, I would like to thank Bindu Lohani for giving the inaugural lecture. I think it's a very important, substantive, and comprehensive lecture. You've told us that historically, Asia is re-emerging in the world economy. Asia, however, faces enormous problems and challenges. And Asia's future will not be assured unless Asia can go through a paradigm shift. And ADB is playing a very important role, because when you loan money to the borrowing countries, you are helping this country to make the transition. So I'd like to ask you one question, then I'll invite questions from the audience. Can you share with us 3 Asian success stories or best practices? Success stories or best practices which are practical, scalable, and which can be replicated.
You always know the Professor Koh's questions are the hardest always, you know that. Those of you who have taken exams. And he's put emphasis on 3, not more than 3, scalable and practical. Now, if you take one of the most recent example, to me, the Asia has done extremely well on renewable energies. It's made it cheaper. It's made it possible, and it was possible because of the policies the countries were able to put. Simple things like feed-in tariff that make it enormous possibilities in our region. It's growing. We can't keep up with the business. Second, it's also scalable. Very simple. Scalable, huge. And sometimes I ask the countries, why it's not scalable? Why can't you do so much enormous shortage of people sometimes, shortage of money maybe, but certainly scalable. 1. Second, I would say the really tremendous success in water, Singapore. And to me, when I say Singapore water example is a great example, how you've been able to, I'm an engineer, I used to do water supply design. You brought it to 5% now, right? 5% loss? This is much lower than the design norm. This is one of the best world standard. But it shows that it's possible. It's possible. And when I tell to the developing poor countries, they say, well, Singapore is nonetheless the OECD, very rich country. I said, no. Phnom Penh. The Cambodia also does, by the way, not 5%, maybe 7, 8%. It's still drinkable. So if Cambodia can do it, any Asian country should be able to do it. Then it's convincing. To me, this is scalable. This is doable. The third area which I will really do it, which I would say is, in this whole business of pollution, again, go back, I just signed this memorandum of understanding with Yokohama. Yokohama was a port city. Every port city, if you go back 30 years in the history, is a mess. It's a red light area, it's everything. You know, the people will say, don't go to the port area. Today, it's a fantastic place. The ability for people to turn around a polluted place to a livable city. Yokohama is possible, Singapore the same way. Last 40 years, how we've made some of the slums livable. I think this is, I hope this would be done for this 500 million people today. So these are three, I don't want to go more than three, but I have more. So these are all scalable, all doable, all has happened in Asia. Only three I gave you.
Thank you. Thank you. Question from you, please. Please, Dr. Lina Chan, who's from the National Parks Board and an expert in biological diversity. You want to use a microphone? Why don't you bring the microphone to her rather than?
Yeah, sort of just outside my reach. Yeah, you mentioned several environmental trends, and I'm going to mention two. One, urbanization and biodiversity loss, which might seem as two oxymoron, two completely different aspects, which means that with increased urbanization, biodiversity loss will be greater. I would like you to maybe comment on it, that we think that urbanization could be the solution to biodiversity loss, because if cities or areas become more urbanized, we are concentrating larger population in smaller areas, hopefully, which meant that many of the ecosystems out there could actually recover. And also, if we make cities biophilic, which means that you have a lot of biodiversity in cities, which we think can be done, as we try to do in Singapore, like a city in a garden, we can actually have the cake and eat it, in the sense that we can have lots of biodiversity within the city, which means that everything we do, we have to think of biodiversity in mind. Make our roads planted with more trees, buildings more, biodiversity friendly. Everywhere we go, we should have biodiversity in sight. That would then free a lot of our ecosystems to recover. Could you comment on it? Thank you.
Sure, certainly. Whether we like or not, as I said, most of our people are going to live in urban areas, cities. The question is, urbanization means further loss of the biodiversity. The question is, it doesn't have to be. Biodiversity is a location specific. If you have certain thing, a precious forest ecosystem to be protected, it is there. You don't have to take that out to make the city right there. You can build around it, or you can do it. So you finding the places where you can develop is very important. And it doesn't have to be by destroying those ecosystems. It has happened in some countries, not for the city, very much from agricultural land and other purposes, less to the cities. So, and then when you say biodiversity, there are two types of things we need to say. One, those precious ecological systems which needs to be preserved because they are unique and they are valuable. Once you lose it, you lose forever. That needs to be protected, that needs to be protected. That's why I said in my slide, please protect what you have it. If you have lost something, you've lost it. Now, the second thing, like you rightly said, like Singapore, let's start creating more plants, more trees. That is a different kind of greenery. That's greeneries. You won't be able to create a tropical forest, artificial with everything else, but you can simulate to a certain extent, which I think is nice to have within a city. I've always used to hear Singapore as a garden city, or now city in a garden. I think that's always good to keep that in mind. And to me, most of the cities that have been developed, I've been seeing it also in Philippines and other places, is really like concrete. Unfortunately, not like Singapore. And why? I just asked my real estate friend in Manila, why did this happen? Oh, Bindu, how precious is this piece of land? I'm not going to waste this for planting tree. So the greed and all the planning, regulatory weaknesses or not being there, I think all these are enforcing. But whatever you said is correct. But only thing I would say, those ecosystems that are to be protected, you don't have to build the cities, and I hope people will not build it out there. If you can create green cities, smart cities, by planting, yeah, why not? Let's do that as well.
Thank you. Another question, please.